In World War II, the Soviet Red Army allowed women to join the military, especially following the initial invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. Hitler, after initially taking control of France and Poland, wished to expand his empire east, and he looked towards the Balkans and also Russia. The Soviets and the Nazis signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was a deal about how the two nations would divide up Poland, but there was also guarantees of peace between the two. However, this did not last long, when Hitler in 1941 rolled his tanks and army into Soviet territory. Because the invasion came at full steam initially, many soldiers were killed, with especially heavy losses on the Soviet side, and because of this, Stalin decided to allow women to join the military and take up arms. However, many of the women, if captured, were dealt with horrifically by the German army. Many German generals sought to execute women Soviet soldiers instantly. Others were executed in barbaric fashion, but many of these women became heroes after the war. They were awarded the highest order and honour inside the Soviet Union for their efforts. One of these women was Yelena Stempkovskaya, a radio operator who was executed in barbaric fashion, but fought valiantly during the Second World War. Remember as always to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. However, before we begin, I'd like to talk about today's video sponsor, NordVPN. Many of my viewers enjoy watching historical documentaries and films, and NordVPN can allow you to access movies, TV series and documentaries from all around the world, simply by changing how your location appears. This allows you to unlock Netflix libraries and catalogues from all around the world, from within the comfort of your own home. Also, many of my viewers enjoy researching different topics, and NordVPN can allow you access to educational materials that sometimes can be annoyingly restricted behind a limit of how many articles you can read a day. With NordVPN this would not be an issue, and you can access educational resources from all around the world, which I found useful when researching my videos. It's extremely easy to use, and allows you to stay safe online and private, and ensures your digital footprint is secure and safe. It's available in 59 different countries and is incredibly fast, and NordVPN is also available on every major platform, such as Windows, macOS and even Android TVs. So don't hesitate today, pick up the Cyber Monday deal, go to nordvpn.com/theuntoldpast to get a 2-year plan plus 1 month additional free with a huge discount. Yelena Stempkovskaya was born in October 1921 and was born into a Belarusian family in the Minsk region. She was born and raised there, and her life was relatively normal before her parents moved to a different region of the Uzbek area. Her parents worked inside of cotton fields in the summer. Yelena was also a member of the Komsomol, the Youth Communist League, who performed different roles in Soviet society. During the Second World War they worked to build infrastructure and maintain it, as well as working in agriculture to gather harvests to feed the nation. Yelena became a young pioneer leader and was seen as a prominent communist young leader. She dreamed to work on board a ship and rise to the very top, but decided to become a teacher to educate young people. She became a history teacher just before the war came to the Soviet Union. The Germans invaded the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941, and the goal was to smash communism and Bolshevism, and for the Germans to populate the region with their people. The plan was to use the conquered population for slave labour, and to help the Axis war effort. With the Lebensraum and living space policy, it led to mass executions and exterminations, genocide and depopulation and deportations of population. The operation saw 3 million members of the Axis forces invade the Western Soviet Union along an 1,800-mile front, and they made use of around 600,000 vehicles, tanks and also 6,000 horses. Barbarossa opened up the Eastern Front, and the offensive saw a huge new theatre of the Second World War created, one that saw some of the most brutal and certainly the deadliest fighting of the conflict. The area saw a huge number of atrocities and casualties, and the Nazis were brutal to the people of the Soviet Union. They starved and executed around 3.3 million Soviet POWs, and mass shootings and gassings saw over 1 million Soviet Jews killed in the Holocaust. The German forces smashed through the Soviet defences in the early days of the invasion, and caused huge losses for the Soviets, and following this Joseph Stalin allowed women to take up arms and to join the Red Army. This saw thousands of women take up fighting roles in the Second World War, seeing action famously as snipers, tank drivers and even bomber squadrons in the skies. Many more joined up as nurses or in other roles, and Yelena Stempkovskaya joined up after leaving school. She left school to join the army in November 1941, and she enrolled in a number of different courses, including a local radio operator's course. She graduated from this within a few months. Classes usually lasted over a year, but such was the need to get people to the front lines, the courses were taught in a much more intense environment. She went straight to the front lines and excelled as a radio operator, and was noted for her leadership. She initially saw deployment on the southern front, and took part in the Battle for Volchansk, before she emerged in the city of Kharkov in May 1942. Yelena saw action in a number of different attacks and offensives, and took part in the battles for Volchansk, Kharkov, and in other operations. She was initially assigned to work as a radio operator for a tank unit, to help them communicate effectively with infantry soldiers. The tank crews would need to work together with infantry to support attacks and defensive strategies. Without effective communication, often tank crews could find themselves rendered useless and a target. But in this role, Stempkovskaya found herself away from the front lines, and she wished to get closer to the action and in the thick of it. She was assigned to the 2nd Battalion of the 216th Infantry Regiment, and she began to train as an infantry soldier, and in particular a machine gunner. She wrote home at one point, telling her family of her pride being involved in the Red Army, fighting for the Soviet Union. She was incredibly brave, however her death and execution was incredibly brutal. When women were captured by the German army, they were often treated in horrific fashion, being abused and mutilated before they were executed in a number of horrific ways. On the battlefield, German generals wished to execute these women in quick fashion, as they saw the fact they took up arms as disgusting and against traditional German values. Hitler sought to instill roles for women that were very backwards, and women were sacked from high-profile jobs to take up domestic roles as mothers, with the sole intent of maintaining homes and having as many children as possible for the German Reich. The fact the Soviets allowed women to fight caused a huge degree of controversy for the Germans, hence why they wanted them dead as soon as they were captured. During one operation, the German army had launched an attack that isolated her battalion command post, where she was based, and they were cut off from the rest of the regiment. Because of this, Yelena Stempkovskaya worked tirelessly to restore communications, and she held out as long as she could. During the intense fighting, she worked to transmit messages to the regimental command, as long as she could, trying to hold out the command post as well. She managed to do this for a while, however she eventually became overwhelmed by the German forces. The Germans stormed the command post and broke in, and during a short firefight, she shot dead many German soldiers who had breached. She tried to fight off as many as she could, and initially did well, however there were too many of them, and she was then captured. The Germans saw her as very dangerous, and Yelena Stempkovskaya was then tortured for information in a horrific manner. Torture was used to get as much information as possible, and the German soldiers wanted her to reveal what she knew about the Red Army missions and objectives. But Yelena refused to hand over anything, and during her torture she was mutilated terribly by the Germans, and both her hands were cut off by the enemy. Despite being in immense pain and losing 2 hands, she still continued to refuse to give over anything. This showed her strength and her refusal to conform to the enemy's demands. However, the Nazis then decided she was a lost cause. If she did not give away any information, even when she lost 2 hands, it was clear she wouldn't give anything over. Because of this, she was then taken out of her cell and was dragged along the ground and was then shot in the head. As the Red Army took the German territory she was held in, her remains were later found, where she was interred in a mass grave by the Red Army. However, the bravery of Yelena Stempkovskaya was well known within the soldiers, and later during the war, she was awarded the prestigious Order of the Red Banner, despite being nominated for the more prestigious Order of Lenin. However, after the Second World War, she was awarded this, along with the Hero of the Soviet Union Award, the most prestigious title. Yelena Stempkovskaya was a brave young lady who wished to fight for the Soviets during the most brutal fighting of World War II. She was just 20 when she was executed by the Germans, but her torture and attempts to extract information was incredibly savage. She was a very good radio operator and showed a great degree of courage. However, she died at the hands of the Germans, who viewed her as incredibly dangerous. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.